Don't we all know New Zealand as the best country in the world? Well, I hate to break it to you, but that's because you've only heard one side of the story. While there's no denying that its unique landscapes, lush greenery, and breathtaking islands make for the perfect laid-back holiday, there's a lot of darkness to be unveiled. Hidden behind the picturesque country is a lifestyle that's difficult to maintain, with discrimination on the rise and a terrible fly problem. So let's dive right in. Ozone layer depletion. It's important to plan ahead so one doesn't end up in a mess and ruin what was supposed to be a dream vacation. And that means knowing when it's the best time to travel. Summers bring with them an opportunity to do many outdoor activities. The greenery becomes more vibrant and energy levels rise. So naturally, no one would want to sit indoors. But with New Zealand, there's a risk. Going outside means exposing oneself to harmful UV rays. Because of the harmful ozone-destroying chemicals, the country now sits directly under a hole, and no matter how much sunscreen you put on, it doesn't really work because the heat is real. It can be very damaging, with increased chances of skin-peeling sunburns. UV rays are the biggest cause of skin cancer, so if you're planning to stay longer, you might want to shorten your trip, or load up on tons of sunscreen. And if you think New Zealand winters would offer some relief, you're dead wrong. The sun is out most of the day, and everything gets very gloomy and dark. The temperatures rise to an almost unbearable level, so if you plan to visit during this time, don't live in the old housing structures. The insulation is a major issue there since they were built ages ago, and chances are that you'll probably end up getting freezing, getting ill, and ruining your trip. Expensive flights and accommodation. Also, since summer is the peak season, accommodation becomes very expensive, and so do flight tickets. I'd recommend traveling between March to May or September to October, as you'll find things are cheaper. These are months after the peak season and before the off-season, so tourism slows down, and if you're lucky, you'll be able to get discounts on accommodation prices as well. If you're traveling solo, you can go for dorm rooms, which would decrease your costs by a lot. But regardless, since it is an expensive country, keep in mind that it would end up costing you the same as if you went on a luxury trip. However, if you're willing to deal with layovers, compromise on living standards, and limit other spending like shopping, food, and so on, then your costs might be cut down. But not by a lot. Let's say maybe $200, but no more than that. It would help if you plan the trip with a couple of other travelers, as then the cost would be divided among more people, leading to more overall savings. A remote paradise. Another factor that needs to be considered is that the country is in the middle of nowhere. It's situated in a very remote area, and the flights to and from other cities are super expensive, meaning you'll have to think twice if you're planning to backpack across different countries. I'd recommend that you solely plan to explore New Zealand if you take the trip. Since New Zealand is considered the most expensive country in the world, the cost of living is relatively high too. And you know what that means. You kiss your dreams of splurging goodbye. The reason behind the high cost of living is that most things like clothes, food, and electronics are imported. But that's not even the major issue. The rents take a large chunk out of your salary. By that, I mean more than half of it if you live in the happening cities. It doesn't get any better if you're earning in New Zealand either, because you'd still only be able to afford a middle-class lifestyle with close to nothing when it comes to savings. And there's one more thing you should keep in mind when traveling, and that is the internet. If you're used to lightning speed connections, or are a social media junkie, blogger, or a vlogger, well, I've got bad news for you. There is a huge problem with connection in New Zealand. It's super slow, and there's nothing they can do about it. The country is situated at the bottom of the world, which means that it's located right at the end of the communication lines that run through the Pacific. This disadvantage leaves them with only 2 cables that provide the internet. So naturally, as over 5 million people are living there, internet speed is an issue. But since you'll be in one of the countries considered a paradise on Earth, a little time away from the screen won't hurt, and it'll make way for a much-needed social media cleanse. Racism. Kiwis are famous for being warm and social, but guess what? Racism is an issue in the country. It's surprising, right? Turns out, not all Kiwis live up to their reputation. It's something expats have had to face on an everyday basis, so you can imagine how big of a problem it is. And although it's mostly small things like a comment or a joke here and there, it eventually adds up to create bigger issues. Asian people are specifically targeted because of their skin, hair color, and even the way they speak. A study showed that out of 7,000 hate crimes that have been filed since January of 2022, 2,000 of those were against Asians and South Asians. Muslims and Jewish people are repeatedly singled out because of their religious differences. Even people belonging to the LGBTQ community have faced hostility time and time again. Unpredictable weather. Packing for the trip is difficult, as New Zealand's weather can vary from time to time. It might be sunny one day, and then the next it'll be pouring rain. Packing a raincoat is a must, just to be on the safe side. And 1 or 2 warmer items won't hurt either. According to some tourists, they have experienced 4 seasons in one day. So that should be enough to tell you how unpredictable things can be. Also, even in winter, don't forget the sunscreen. Insects. Gosh, this one's the absolute worst if you're afraid of the tiny creatures. Turns out New Zealand is famous for its diverse range of bugs. So here's a heads up. Take an insect repellent and keep one on you at all times. If you're planning on visiting the beaches in Auckland, there's a chance that you might be attacked while swimming. And I'm not joking. There is something known as sea lice that's in the water during summertime. And, well, if you were unlucky enough to get into contact with them, you won't even realize what's happened until it's too late. They're too small to be seen, but leave a red, itchy rash. So just be careful unless you want to look like you might have a skin condition, and that too on vacation. There are mosquitoes and sandflies as well. Sandflies are the worst, as their bites leave behind inflamed and itchy patches. They're found in the West Coast region, and I bet anyone who's traveled to New Zealand will back this up. I mean, there are articles written about the whole ordeal visitors have had to face. And guess what? They attack in packs, so there would be 100 coming at you at once, and there's nothing you'll be able to do about it except run and get bit. Some entomologists did research on these little suckers, and it turns out they have a bite rate of about 1,000 per hour. If you don't get out of there fast, they'll probably suck all the blood out of you. Okay, that sounds a tad bit too extreme. Just remember to wear full sleeves if you're heading to the West Coast in summer. As for the sea lice, if you get bit by them, rub alcohol or diluted vinegar on the wounds and pray for the best. Limited options for partying. Let's get one thing straight. If you're planning a trip to New Zealand for nightlife enjoyment, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. That's not to say that there aren't any clubs or bars in the country, but Queenstown might be the only place that you'll find them easily. So if you're someone that likes to dance and drink and attend concerts and festivals, it's probably better not to visit. The entire point of making a trip there is to enjoy the scenic views and immerse yourself in nature. New Zealand is a place for outdoorsy people. Those who want a peaceful and relaxed vacation will be over the moon once they land in the country. There's no denying that all countries have good and bad sides. However, when we look at it closely, the good still outweighs the bad in many situations. And New Zealand is the prime example of such a country. It's best to know both sides, especially if you're planning to travel, so that you can prepare in advance. That being said, it remains one of the top countries on people's bucket lists. So if the opportunity arises, I won't think twice about traveling there. Let us know what shocked you the most, and share your experiences if you've ever traveled to New Zealand in the comments down below. If this has helped you plan your next trip, smash the like button and subscribe too. Until then, stay tuned for more.